Welcome to the Child Anxiety FAQ podcast. FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions, and each episode I'm answering your questions about child and teen anxiety. My name is Dawn Friedman, and I've been working with kids and families for more than 30 years. As a preschool teacher, parent educator, family case manager, clinical counselor, and now as the owner and operator of Child Anxiety Support, where I help parents of anxious kids. And this episode's question is: how can I support my anxious child while also addressing their inappropriate behavior? Specifically, this is someone who wrote me and was talking about meltdowns. And I'll give you some details. Their child is 10. Their child, when pressed to do things that make them nervous, specifically, this parent is asking about in the morning before school, their child just melts down. They fall to the floor, they scream and yell, they run back upstairs. They're making the parent late for work every morning because so much trouble getting them out of school. And they're asking, how do I handle this behavior? They were specifically asking about the inappropriate behavior. This is a really complicated question because I don't know what else is going on in the family. I don't know where else the child is feeling anxiety. But let's say that the parent is reaching out to me to work with me specifically about school refusal and their child's inappropriate behavior. Before we get to the behavior, we're going to really sit down and look at that school refusal. I'm really going to want to know some details about it. These are some of the questions I would have, and you can ask yourself around whatever the anxiety is. First of all, I would want to know, is there anything actually going on that is making this incredibly difficult for the child? This is important with school refusal. Sometimes school refusal is social anxiety. I'm just nervous around other people. Sometimes it's separation anxiety. I don't like to leave you. I don't like to leave my house. And sometimes it's because the school is a poor fit. And we have to consider that when we're looking at it. If, for example, there's a bullying situation going on, it really might not be safe for the child. If the child has learning disabilities or learning differences that aren't being well addressed, then the child may be being asked to work beyond their capacity and is asking for more support. So we're going to clear those things out first and make sure this child is in a good fit environment. I'll mention that before I worked with a parent whose 5-year-old was struggling with school refusal at a pre-K program, that when we really dialed down into it was a bad fit for that child. It was super academic. It was asking the child to sit still in ways that were not developmentally appropriate for that child. Now, fortunately, this family had some room to move and they were able to look for a play-based program, and their child did wonderfully. So we're going to look at that first. But let's say, for the sake of this podcast, that the parent has done this and the school's actually, it's a good fit and the school is very supportive of the child and the school is working with the family. And it really comes down to that the child has some separation anxiety. Well, we might want to look at other areas that the child is struggling with separation, for example, bedtime. So we might look and discover that the child is struggling to separate at night. And when we look into that, we realize the child is not getting enough sleep. So in the morning, one reason the child is melting down is they're really tired and they are not able to function as well as they are when they're better rested. So before we start looking at the anxiety in the morning with a school refusal, we might start with addressing bedtime and addressing sleep. But let's say again, the family has done this, the child is getting enough sleep, and it's just in the morning. Well, then I would ask, where else is the child melting down? Is this a way that the child functions? Has the child learned that melting down is an effective way to get their needs met? Now, this is not about a child being manipulative. I've got an earlier podcast, I'll link it in the show notes, where we talk about manipulation. And I don't really buy into manipulation. I think it's more about, has the child learned that this is a way to get their needs met? If a child learns that when they say to their parent, You hate me. You must hate me, or you wouldn't do this to me. That the parents like, oh man, right to my heartstrings. That then they respond, okay, never mind. I'm not going to make you do it. Again, this is not manipulation. The child is trying to communicate their level of distress, and they will amp up until they feel heard by you. And sometimes the way they will know that they are heard is you give in and they go, oh, finally understand how impossible this is for me. I know now that I need to say, I think you hate me. I need to let you know I have that feeling, and then you'll believe me. This is very tough stuff because, again, the child is in distress. But we have to ask the parent, is the child actually safe? I know they feel in distress, but are they actually safe? Are you do you hate them? Okay, maybe you hate their behavior in that moment. Maybe you've had it up to here, but no, you love them. And there are many examples of that in your life together, of you loving them. They're not able to access that in this moment. So you're not going to argue with them. You're just going to understand they feel that way and it is not true. So you can honor the feeling. I know you are so disappointed that I am not giving in here, but you are still going to hold them accountable. How this looks will depend on how the child is melting down, because safety always first. Safety for the child, safety for you. But I want to say that one aspect of safety is you, my wonderful, lovely child, I am also going to protect you from your worst impulses. This is what we do when we have a child who hits and hurts. We do not allow that. And we don't allow that because people need to be safe. People need to not be hit. People need to not be hurt. But also, for the child who does the hitting and hurting, I need to protect you from your worst impulses. We all have times that we wish we could lash out. It's totally understandable. But my child, I know that it doesn't feel good to be the kind of person who hits and hurts. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel shame. You're going to start thinking of yourself as somebody who hurts people, which is not a great way to feel about ourselves. And so we need to protect them. When you hit and hurt, I can't allow that. I will help you. And that might be removing them. That might be removing the people they're trying to hurt, like a sibling. That might be for some kids who melt down and trash their rooms. I'm going to take things out of your room that you would really regret breaking, or that I would really regret you breaking. In a down calm time, we're going to have a discussion about, do you want me to remove it? We're protecting our child from their worst impulses. These mornings, these meltdown mornings, to address them, we are likely going to have to plan for a worst case scenario, which is you're going to be late. So the time to tackle it is a time when you have space and capacity to tackle it. If you can, that might mean calling into work to say you're going to be late. It might be calling in reinforcements who can be with your child when you go, because once you're going to tackle it, you can expect that behavior to increase. That's what happens when we start setting limits. If the limit has always been, as soon as you say, oh, mom, I know you hate me, I give in. If I don't give in, then when you say that, oh, mom, I think you hate me, and I don't give in, the child's going to push it a little more. Okay, fine. I hate myself then. I wish I could die. Again, this is not manipulative. The child is amping up to saying, I don't think you heard me. I don't think you heard how desperate I am in this moment. So we're going to make a plan for it. We're going to make a plan for everything to get worse. How can you support your anxious child while also addressing their inappropriate behavior? It's partly planning for the inappropriate behavior and deciding on a response. We make sure we have our goal in mind of extinguishing the inappropriate behavior, starting to hold boundaries, starting to send that message. And then we make a plan for it, and then we hold that plan. How long it takes for the child to no longer do the inappropriate behavior really depends on your child. If you have a high persistent child, a child with stick-to-itiveness, what we would call stubborn, that behavior is going to last longer. We're just going to know that. We're just going to plan for it. And I would say for this kind of morning thing, maybe we say, okay, this week, we are going to do nothing these 5 days but really double down on this. And that takes a lot of preparation at the beginning, communication with the child, creating your plan, creating your backup, creating your supports, and then it's the plan itself. When we're addressing inappropriate behavior, we're also looking for good behavior because a child who is feeling pretty good about themselves is more likely to be responsive when we're setting limits. You're like, oh my gosh, Dawn, this is so much. I just want to know what to do in the morning. I know, I know. But what you do in the morning is actually what you do in your whole lives together. When we're changing these kinds of patterns, it's a big picture. It's a big picture of all that's going on and where do we begin? And a whole lot of it begins way before that morning. If you have a question you would like to ask for the Child Anxiety Support Podcast, you can do that by sending me a message, sending me a direct message on social media. I'm Dawn Friedman, MSEd at most places. Or you can go to my website, childanxietysupport.com/podcast, and I have a form there for submitting it. I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.